Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news, reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit education or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. This video was made for entertainment purposes and is transformative in nature.
Okay, Quanell, my phone tells me it's no longer Columbus Day. My phone says it's National Indigenous Peoples Day. And look, I understand the history, but as an Italian American, I really view Columbus Day as an important ethnic holiday to my people. And you always talk about ethnic holidays, and I want to talk about that too. Look, I looked up this morning. The United States government still spends $20 billion with a B dollars a year for Native Americans. And I understand that we came into what was their place and we took it over and there was a war and da-da-da-da-da. But why are we still spending $20 billion 400 or 500 years later as a result?
Well, I think that it's very important that we talk about just who is Christian Columbus. That was his real name, but of course, for the sake of history, Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus, when he sailed from Europe to discover a new territory, the king and queen believed he was insane, so no one would even really finance him. So they gave him prisoners from the jails to be his shipmates because everybody thought he was crazy. So they cleaned out the prisons and even a couple insane asylums and gave him shipmates. When he came to America, what we know as the indigenous Red Americans, the Indians, they welcomed Columbus in. Christopher Columbus raped the women, murdered the children, murdered the men. This man was a mass killer, a mass sexual predator and rapist. He murdered, raped, and killed all of the Indians, and they welcomed him in. So I say right now, why in the hell are our children out of school celebrating Christopher Columbus Day, the day of a mass killer and a murderer, and you complain about $20 billion? They should have paid them a whole lot more than $20 billion because you murdered over 30.
Hello and welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of YouTube. I am your host, the whiteologist, Mr. Blows Your Mind, and this is We Up Report. We Up Report is to bring news, articulate, transmit, communicate, insinuate, develop, investigate, decode, unveil, spread the news, what is my news video website, or quotes from publications. As I articulate this information, I ask that the creator of the universe be here, heart, soul, mind, and spirit. Because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created this land that you call the United States, we today in the present generation, we give honor to our ancestors. You know what the motto of my show is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. Today's date is November the 30th, 2021. Another episode of We Up Report. We're going to talk about the Groveland dismissal after 7 decades. The Groveland dismissal that kind of fell under the radar. I see that nobody in the corner caught. But We Up Report will give you the update on that and the follow-up on the last show that we did pertaining to Malika Shabazz and her death. And we're going to look at the Shabazz family and its history of tragedies and some could say suspicions that always has surrounded this family, who we consider a great black American family, and the work that they've done from their mother and father. And we're going to look at this and just to elaborate the possibilities. So stay tuned as we are going to get into this broadcast. Hey, how's y'all doing, everybody? Again, this is your host, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and welcome to another We Up Report. First and foremost, want to say what's good to my fam, my subscribers, my day ones. What's good, everybody? I know, been dragging a little bit, but also want to give recognition to, we do have some trickling in of some new ones. So we want to thank all the new subscribers for being a part of the We Up Report family. We thank you, and hopefully that you stay. Don't forget to hit that like button, share, comment, and all that good stuff. We thank you. Passerbys, if you happen to pass by, this is the most hated show in the black corner of YouTube. Happen to go down the aisle, happen to see something that make you feel some kind of way. Remember, the motto of my show is the truth. Don't need no partner. So today's day is, again, November 30th, 2021. And so much has happened in the last week or 2 weeks that sometimes you have to do a follow-up based on some of the stuff that we already done did. So, as you've seen the thumbnail, you want to put that thumbnail in. Oh, no. So you doing the wrong thing? No. Yeah. You know this guy here. This guy here, man. Sometimes he be off. But we deal with him. I ain't gonna do that. There you go. So, as you've seen the thumbnail that you've seen for this show, the Wizard of Machinations. Let me say that again. The Wizard of Machinations. Now, when you say wizard, a lot of people have their interpretation of what the wizard is. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the kind of way they make a wizard is somebody who's wise, right? Prudent, discreet, sane, right? Those kind of things. They associate wizard with that, right? But they say it's like a philosopher, a sage. One with magical powers. One proficient, they say, in the occult sciences. So, a wizard, right? That means some people who have some knowledge about some things, who are proficient, and with their knowledge can make some things like magic, right? So, machinations, right? We'll read the other part in there, right? So somebody thought, Mr. Blum, what is this machinations you're talking about? What's that? Well, machination is just basically a plotting and intrigue, as they say. You know, they use a term like conspiracy, scheming, intrigued. They also talk about how they talk about contrivance. To design, to scheme, to plot, to contrive skillfully. Okay? So this wizard that we're about to talk about is one who has devices and schemes and plots that, you know, history has shown that some people get under that web and they hold on to those things forever. So that's what we're going to be attempting to do in today's show. or program. Right? Some people don't like to say show because they think it's entertainment, but it is kind of a show, right? Now, I seen this, and I noticed that many people in the corner did not catch it, and they may have their reasons for it, right? It don't mean that they didn't do it with intent, or maybe just went under the radar. Sometimes things just fall up under the radar, and when that happens, right? That's why, as a network, everybody get in and do their part. So anyway, let me go ahead and let me show you this first one here, just in case you did not hear it. Okay, sir, what are you doing? Why he's still there, sir? We did this already, sir. Thank you. Oh my God. Anyway, so okay, Groveland 4, the black men accused in a 1949 rape, get case dismissed. Let me say that one more again. Groveland 4, the black men accused in 1949 rape, get case dismissed. Okay, so this is going to be pertaining about something that happened back in 1949, and we've been having a lot of cases brought before us, as the system in itself might be trying to prep us in a way that getting us used to seeing these certain types of case, racial case and things of that, and getting accustomed that maybe that the justice systems can finally start working things in the way it's supposed to. After all this time, it has not. At least that's the way it's trying to portray itself. We've seen one case and then another case, right? And then we see the difference in the jurors, and then we see a procedure that was used that was very unfamiliar with many when they seen a raffle box come out to be selected. And, so here's one that goes back over almost, let's say about that was 72 years ago. 72 years ago. So let me give you some insight to this story here. In the summer of 1949, a 17-year-old lodged an accusation that would thrust the rural Florida community of Groveland into a decade-long turmoil. The white teenager told police she and her husband were driving home from a dance when they were attacked by 4 young black men who abducted and raped her at gunpoint. Okay? What I said, right? Back in 1949. This person is 17 years old. Talking about the rural Florida community. Okay? So, hearing this on face, right up the front, if you heard somebody tell this story to you, you would feel some kind of way. Man, somebody forecast raped a 17-year-old. Of course we're going to feel some kind of way, right? But let's look at the dynamic of this, right? So we see that they're talking about 4 black young men. 4 on 1. Right? That's a massacre, right? Especially at this point, they're saying using the violence of rape and had the gun in their hand. Now, who in their right mind, even with the race dynamic, would be like, hey man, that ain't cool in no book, right? So, with that being said, then we're looking at 1949, and those of us who have family members and those of us who were living at that time, this basically is execution. Once you get caught with this, you know what time it is, right? So just imagine this has happened, and then they get you, right? So let's go into more to the story. So the claim made by Norma Paget, who is now in her 80s, set off a manhunt that spurred an onslaught of violence against black residents of Groveland, near Orlando, mobilizing the National Guard and prompting Thurgood Marshall, then a lead attorney for the NAACP, take up the cause of the men who would come to be known as the Groveland Four. Okay? So, person who was 17 at the time, her name was Norma Paget. Today she would be in her 80s. And based on the accusation that she had made, it became a manhunt for 4 black men. Right? So, you know, for many of us, going back at that particular time, and just the way that whole attitude was that we all looked alike. So just imagine that the news going out and you live in Groveland and there's an APB out looking for 4 black men. Everybody is up and alarmed and like, what? Right? So just imagine that the violence started to come down into our neighborhoods, as they say, according to this article, right? So there was a lot of violence now in search of mob style looking for 4 black men. And so what ended up happening is they had to call in the National Guards. And at this particular time, when we talk about Thurgood Marshall, who is eventually going to become a judge, is at this time working for the NAACP as an attorney, and he's going to one that's going to take this case, which is going to be deemed as the Groveland Four, right? So let's go on more with this. So it took 7 decades before the state of Florida formally recognized how the 4 accused, Charles Greenlee, Walter Irvin, Samuel Shepard, and Ernest Thomas, were failed by the criminal justice system. Thomas was gunned down by a mob in the wake of Paget's allegations, and the others have also since died. In 2019, Governor Ron DeSantis issued the Groveland Four a posthumous pardon. 7 decades. 70 years. Plus, really, because now it's 72 years, right? So the 4 who they apprehended for the accusation that was made, Charles Greenlee, Walter Irvin, Samuel Shepard, Ernest Thomas. Now, Ernest Thomas got caught by the mob and was gunned down. Now, this was all based on an allegation that went out. The APB went out. The news was ringing out. 4 black men at gunpoint with a white woman and raped her. Okay? Took 70 years for them, but these men had already done passed away. But it still took them 70 years, and I want you to see this. This is the reason why I'm bringing this, because we have to at least know these stories. You know what I'm saying? We have to know these stories. Okay? So, but Monday morning, a circuit court judge in Lake County went further, clearing the charges against the men and issuing a ruling that effectively exonerated them of the crime. Bill Gladson, a local prosecutor, set the extraordinary move in motion last month when he filed paperwork to toss Thomas and Shepard's indictment and set aside the sentence of judgment imposed on Greenlee and Irvin. Men been gone. Just to get the paperwork to get their names cleared after all this time. Slow justice, right? Even after the fact. So that means they had to die knowing they were innocent, right? Dying knowing that you didn't do what you did. You've been lied on. Your life has been taken. Your youth was taken. And here's the system still slowly resolving the issue. But there's more to this, right? There's more to this that you need to know. There's more to this, right? So we follow the evidence to see where it led us, and it led us to this moment. Gladson said at a news conference following the judge's decision. Okay? So accordingly, as this part is pointed out here, the evidence. You convicted, well, one got killed by a mob, the other three had to go through the process. And being 1949, 4 blacks supposedly using the term of rape. You know how slow, if you didn't, what was going to happen, right? You're going to go through this process. And that's what ended up happening. And here they are at this moment in 2021, which would not have been foreseeable in 1949, correct? So the Groveland 4 became a disturbing example of racial injustice for the Jim Crow era and preceded the high-profile killing of Emmett Till, a black 14-year-old who was lynched in Mississippi in 1955 by white men after he was accused of whistling at a white woman. Now, the Groveland 4 became the example. Okay? Now, they want to say Jim Crow era because, yes, they will admit that in the Jim Crow era, this was a little common. They have another example talking about the killing of Emmett Till and how he was just a 14-year-old who got lynched and killed in 1955 by the same kind of accusation, but not this was being a rape. This was just saying whistling. Now, see, today, many of us and those, I can't say myself many of us, but many of yous who have relationships with people outside of you must know that a lot of people died for you doing what you're doing, and there's another side to this, so where there's people who don't like that, right? They don't like that, and just the fact that you are in those relationships, history tells us that all they have to do is make the accusations. And we still see some of them to this day. So it's why it is needed to, refresh your reminder that when you're in these relationships, know about this history. You could be innocently accused, go through the process, die, 70 years later, they talking about clearing your name. What good is clearing your name? Well, the clearing part is good for the family because then they don't get to hold that, allegation as, because back in the day, let's keep this 100. You know why, if you go back in the day, you didn't want to bring ostracism to your family's name. So you didn't try to do what they say today, fuck shit, right? You didn't do fuck shit because fuck shit puts a stain on the entire family. So if you did your dirt, you make sure the dirt don't come home or the dirt don't come and stain the family name. Today is a new day, different things. So people just got they solo, the individuals, and they don't give no fucks, right? But back in the day, there used to be a time you didn't do certain things because that would put a mar on your whole entire family. So these families here are trying to take the stigmatization off their family name due to a lie that's been going for 70 years. And there's people who still associate, even though it's a lie, to the family. And then that makes people murmur, rumors, and so many things. And then you just carrying that. But you all the time knew that they were innocent. But again, whatever is being propagated, whatever the wizard is putting out there to, again, keep this perpetuating, it's you and your family got to deal with it, right? So that's why they do it. So moving on, Gladson appealed to ask a judge to dismiss charge against the Groveland 4 was not based on whether Paget may be lying. King said, but rather on the prosecutorial misconduct and fabrication of evidence at the time. Okay? Listen to what they're saying here. Okay? Now, they are filing, so filing this appeal, and they're filing it not because of the testimony of the person who initiated initially made the accusation. Remember, this all is systemic based to what a 17-year-old had said in 1949 that made one man lose his life, young man to lose his life at that time by a mob and being gunned up. And then the three that go through the process, go through the whole ordeal, right? They say, well, we're not filing based on the fact that whether she lied. We're not going to base it on. But what we're doing is the prosecutorial misconduct. Okay, where the process dealt with it, fabricated evidence, right? But not who initially did it. Okay, I want you to repeat that part. Not who did it, but we're gonna find this other person still. You're not accountable, even though what this evidence is going to purport and show. You're still not accountable, right? That's what they're saying here. Okay? And so they talk about how Paget has rarely spoken publicly about the case. And her family did not return a message seeking comment. She last appeared before the State Clemency Board in January 2019, and this is what she did, to ask them not to pardon the men. Now listen to this, right? Okay? I want y'all to check this out. Okay? The 17-year-old at the time, who's now 80 or in her 80s, okay, never really much mentioned this publicly, didn't talk about it in public, right? And so they were seeking to try to get some comments, but it looks like she had spoken in January 2019, as they said at the Clemency Board hearing. And here, this woman asked that Clemency Board not to pardon the men. Now I want you to hear in her own words what she said. Okay? Let's take that and then we'll be back after that. Can we do that? Yeah, let's take this and we'll be right back after this, y'all.
My name is Norma Tyson Paget Upshaw, and I'm the victim of that night. And I'll tell you now that it's on my mind. It's been on my mind for about 70 years. I was 17 years old, and it's never left my mind, and I can tell you from the time it started until today. If it was last night, I could carry you on that route that I went that night. And I'll tell you this, if you had a gun held to your head and told you if you screamed and didn't do what they said, that they'd blow your brains out, so what would you do? And if you had a daughter, and if you're a mother, and a wife, and a sister, or a niece, and would you give them pardon? No, I don't think you would. I really don't. And every time it comes up, I just quiver on the inside. And I have lived it for 60 years. And when my boys was little, I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want them I was afraid something would happen to them. They might find out who they were, and kill them or do something to them. And now my grandkids is up and they go to school, and I worry about them. And my great-grandkids are coming up. And y'all just don't know what kind of horror I've been through for all these many years. I never told my kids, they knew it, but they never did know what kind of horror I've been through with. And I love each and every one of them. And I don't want them pardoned. No, I do not. And you wouldn't either. I know she called me a liar, but I'm not no liar. If I had to go to court today, I could tell you the same story that I told then. And right now, my nerves are so bad, and I'm quivering on the inside. I can't help it. And I'm begging y'all not to give him pardon because they done it. And y'all can, your minds might be made up. I don't know. They are made up. And if you do, y'all gonna be just as bad, y'all gonna be just like them. I mean, and that's all I've got to say, because I know I'm telling the truth. And like I say, if something happens to any of my kids, I hope it ponders y'all's as mine, that I begged you not to do it. And it's liable to you. And if, like I say, if there's any question y'all want to ask me, I'll try to answer it if I can.
All right, so you heard from Paget, right? I heard the word she just said, right? Now again, remember there's a proceeding because they're trying to discern that the evidence, remember they said that they're presenting this based on the prosecutorial misconduct and the falsifying of evidence, not based on the fact that she's lying. So you heard her own words. And in her own words, you hear her say things that maybe some people would be sympathetic that a person is being elderly and that time, you now, getting closer to the end of your life. And you would think this would be your coming to Jesus moment, right? Most people say, well, this will be your coming to Jesus moment. But to be steadfast, you would think that, well, what she said is true, right? She's not lying. There's no way she could be lying. I mean, why would she be still holding a lie after all this time, right? That would seem like that would be the most, if you heard somebody talk about that, right? But they said as part of the evidence that what they went through, they said they had talked with the grandson of the prosecutor. Now, remember the prosecutor, prosecutorial misconduct. So, in the investigation that they ended up doing, they went and found the grandson of the prosecutor of that time, who's now deceased. And supposedly, he told the investigators that his grandfather and a judge believed no rape occurred. Okay? So they didn't get it from the prosecutor. They got it from the prosecutor's grandson, who said his grandfather and the judge believed no rape occurred. Right? So the grandson heard his grandfather, which was the prosecutor, and a judge say they believed there was no rape occurred. Right? They also had took Urban's pants and tested them in a crime lab. And they said, according to the results, it showed no evidence of semen, even though jurors at the trial were made to believe it existed. This is 1949, though. So it didn't have the in-depthness of what you say of forensic science of that time, but the word of mouth of a professional, of a person who's supposed to have status and, right, good standing, and would not be doing this to be slighting somebody, but accordingly did that. And they end up spending their lives, right, dealing with this. So I want you to hear how one of the family members, who is also has a part of the story that is going to somewhat, I guess you could say, you heard what the article says, that a grandson heard his grandfather and the judge say that there was no rape. But listen to what happened with one of the family members in her story, what she said, and hear for yourself, and let's do this and be right back. Yeah, we can go there.
My name is Norma Tyson Paget Upshaw.
You sick? You sick today? Take a day off. I'll try that again.
I'm Dr. Beverly Robinson, and I am the first cousin of Samuel Shepard. I want to start by saying this. I agree. Pardon is not the right word. The right word is exonerate, because it never happened. I was reading the letter that my family and other families sent to you. And at the bottom it says, of course you all have it in front of you, this week, the Orlando Sentinel reported that family members of the Groveland 4 accuser had written clemency board members in a last-minute effort to block justice. Though we are saddened by their action, it does not appear they have countered any of the overwhelming evidence of innocence. Let me bring to your attention that in 1997, I was then a professor of education at the local state, now state, but then community college. At that time, the Florida legislature had also mandated that all teachers in the state of Florida must take a course on cultural diversity. I was that instructor to teach that course. One of the first assignments I gave my students was for them to write an essay on the first time they encountered racism in their lives. As I was reading the papers, the final paper that I began to read gave a detailed account of what happened that night. In fact, that was the title of the paper, What Happened the Night in Groveland. As I got to the end of that paper, I guess that's how God works, I then got a call from the hospital that my 88-year-old aunt was going into cardiac arrest. But by then, I was in complete shock of what I had read in the paper. The paper, Paget family, was written by your niece, Miss Paget, who said in the paper, in her letter and her essay, that it never happened. The family swore all of them to secrecy, that they were to never tell the truth. It never happened, Miss Paget. Family, it never happened. You all are liars. Now, I know it's enough out of me. It's always enough when you're telling the truth. I am asking for exoneration because it never happened.
Hey, you sitting here watching the video. Why you sitting there? Put put your hand on that like button, click it, thumbs it up, share this video, comment. You can like or dislike it. We don't care about that. And also, if you ain't over here and subscribe, what you waiting on? Get yourself on there and subscribe to get on up to We Up Report so you can stay up, because we going to keep you up. That's how you help keep this channel going. You can also do some monetary donations. We'll tell you about that later. But right now, wake yourself up, like, share, and comment. And don't forget, when you subscribe on that button, hit that put all notifications. You know. All right, we are back, right? So you heard what the family members said there, right? And so the Thomases, right? And what she said, that how she got a essay from the niece of the Paget family. And they were sworn to secrecy to never, ever tell. Swore to never, ever tell. Ain't that something? So, you know, there's people, we talk about code and how people have code. And as I was saying in the early parts of getting to this story, how a woman who's 80 years old, who's maybe more closer to having, leaving this earth, is still gonna hold to her initial accusation till the wheels fall off. But in the way that she kind of said what she said, you hear that if you pardon him, that she felt that the repercussions is going to fall on her grandchildren. You heard her say that, right? It makes sense now that you heard what she said. She loved them, which we don't doubt. But if you tell the truth, and they already had all the evidence, everything has shown that what you said is not true, and yet you still holding on to it. But what about the 4 lives that had been affected by it? But you'll have many people sitting out here saying that certain things don't exist because they don't see it. Well, it's kind of the reason why you don't see it is because it's like a wizard, huh? It's a wizard. It has magical powers. It's the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. The plots and schemes, the machinations, right? That people will devise in order to maintain certain positions, thoughts, statuses, and lies. It's kind of like at the beginning of this show where you heard the conversation about Christopher Columbus, right? You remember that part in the beginning where it was a dissertation between two and about Indigenous Peoples Day and him being Italian and what Christopher Columbus mean to him. And then the brother's like, well, based on what you asking me, why after we know what we now, he admitted that we came here, we took this land, we killed the people, but that's all in the past. And then why are we still today still giving money for something that's done passed so long ago? You know, a lot of people like to say that. They love to say something happened so long ago that what does that got to do with today? You know, we wherever age we are right now hearing, and then going back in life, there's things that didn't happen. Even though you are now in the present, those things of the past that you can relate, that are good, the bad, and the ugly, you can recall. And some of that stuff that you can recall, or maybe some of the stuff you have blocked out of your mind, we are sum total of all our experiences, right? Let me say that again. We are a sum total of all our experiences. So, with that being said, if we are to open up history books and start reading about the history in this country and a particular people in general, have a more atrocious history, right? Atrocious. What are the cause and effects, and does it still permeate you to this day? Even though some people say it's not like it was and start picking certain errors. But a wizard of machinations can just hide itself unbeknownst and still be doing its dirty work, right? Even though you don't discern it, because I think the Bible says that the devil exists and people can't even see that he's there, right? Like he doesn't even exist, right? So, you know, I remember the last show that I did, they did the pardon, right? They did the pardon. Put that. Can we do that? You should be able to do that, right? Yeah, do that. Take that. Because I think the last show that we did, we talked about how those who got exonerated for the killing of Malcolm X, right? Are you ready? Yeah, you can put that up there for me, sir. Okay. Right? 2 men convicted of killing Malcolm X to be exonerated, right? Last story that we did, we kind of open up and show some things involved inside of there, right? We did that, right? And so, as you see on your screen there, it says November 17th on there, right? 2021. That's what you see, right? And that's when that story came out. But about 5 days after that, right? I think it was about 5 days after that, you get this, I think, end up happening. So let's see. Can we do that? Yeah, we should be able to do that, right? So yeah, we could do that. So 5 days later, we end up getting this breaking news. So I want you to hear this, right?
We begin with some breaking news here tonight. Malcolm X's daughter, Malika Shabazz, has been found dead in her Brooklyn apartment. Police say Shabazz's daughter found her unconscious in her Midwood living room just before 5 o'clock this evening. Police say that her death is not suspicious at this time. This does just come days after the 2 men convicted of killing Malcolm X were exonerated. Shabazz was one of 6 of Malcolm X's children. She was 56 years old.
Right? So we had initially got that story, and then 5 days after doing that, right, then we got that news, right? And the ironicness of that, right? The ironicness that when you go and you see that it said Malcolm X's daughter found dead in her apartment. Now, prior I was talking about Christopher Columbus. When you think about Christopher Columbus, you're talking about colonize, right? And when you think about colonize, you're talking about someone to migrate and to settle in, to make another place into a national dependency without regard for settlement there. I think an individual named Dundas Chairman of the East Indian Company wrote a letter in April 2nd of 1800. He talked about no principle ought ever to be tolerated or acted upon that does not proceed on the basis of India being considered as a temporary resident of establishment for the good government of the country upon steady and uniform principles, and of a large for the beneficial management of its trade upon rules applicable to the state and manners of the country, right? So in other words, he basically just saying that it's not cool that somebody come in, take over your spot, make your natural resources and your natural resources become their warehouse, and then what they do is they make trade and make profit and subjugate you and keep you in squalor. right? That's what he's saying, right? So when we think about the history of Christopher Columbus, and basically what they were was kind of like, go, I guess they call it voyage, and then go colonize, and then subjugate these people, and then that's be our new territory. They always talk about evolution, to evolve. So what is the evolution of that from then, and then later, and then what it is now? Mr. Blow, I thought you were talking about Malcolm X's daughter. Well, we are. Because there's some history in here that we have to look at, right? There's some history here. And the history is, when you talk about the Kennedys, right? Because, matter of fact, let me show you this. Hold on, let me see the outline. Let's look at it this way. Do you see what date it says of that date that she was found dead in her apartment? You see, it says November 22nd on there. Does that ring a bell to anybody when you say November 22nd? No? Don't. What if I put 1963 on the back of that? Would that make a difference? Because it was November 22nd, 1963, that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, correct? And based on the literature and history and movies that have talked about this particular incident that got Malika Shabazz kind of reprimanded from the Nation of Islam, or by the Nation of Islam, was based on supposedly him commenting about the assassination of JFK, right? About the chickens coming home to roost. Right? Remember that? And so he was to be silenced for a certain period of time, and I think maybe he wasn't in agreement to it and so forth. But the ironicness, right? Ironicness, because really when you think about the word ironic, right? When you think about ironic, it's kind of funny because words tell things. It's putting on a feigned ignorance, dissembling, right? Ironic. You have to dissemble it to find out, well, what is the core line? What is the core line through this, right? And when we talk about Malcolm X and JFK, in this, what I'm talking about, JFK was looked upon as Camelot in this country, right? They were the Camelots, right? And when you look at when you know about the history of the JFK family, the tragedies and stuff that done happened, and just seemed to be one thing after another. Well, when I look at Malcolm Shabazz, or Malcolm X, or Malcolm Malik Shabazz, and his family, I kind of equate the Shabazzes kind of like the Kennedys. But a lot of times what people like to do is they try to make the black white person. Now they in their own category, and they just this black family, right? So when I look at the Shabazzes, I kind of look at them, but I look at them better than I look at the Kennedys, because what they were standing for and what they were doing, right? And so let's look at some of the tragedies that possibly could be part from. It's possible. We're not gonna say for 100. The Wizard of the Machinations, right? We're gonna say it's a possibility. We just kind of connect some dots here, right? We're not insinuating anything. We're just gonna let what has been reported by supposedly credible sources, and looking at how November 17th, being the day of exoneration 2 men, and then 5 days later, right, that Malika Shabazz ended up dying, right? Some people even said, well, what did she die from? I'll put it like this. How about this? Let me. Can we do that? Can we do that? Yeah. Well, no, not that one. Not that one, sir. Not that one, sir. No, well, because yeah, I wanted to do that because, well, anyway, you know, they on the 27th, which was a Saturday, they buried her, right, in Westchester, right? They had a memorial for her in Westchester, which was 5 days later. So we got November 17th, the exoneration date. 5 days after that, Malika Shabazz is found in her apartment. And on the 27th of November, she had her funeral service, right? And the reports had said that she had an illness, but not substantiated by the family. And I have to ask the question, if somebody dies on the 22nd, can you have the toxicology, the medical examiner's report in 5 days, right? Is it possible? It could be possible. But we know, according to the reports that came out, stated that it was the NYPD who said that, you know, they're the ones who confirmed that. It was them who confirmed that. And I said, okay, fine, all right. That be the case. Okay. Now let's backtrack just a little bit because we're gonna keep that, right? Remember, they the ones who said it was I think Shay Dermott or Dermott Shay, an NYPD, came out and, according to the article, stated that the people who he got his information from, medical examiner, and talked to the family, that it was an illness, but none of that has been substantiated by the family nor the medical examiners, but they gave the statement, and I just said, okay, the NYPD is substantiating what happened. Okay. So let's go back to back on November 17th when it showed, right, when it showed that, right, when it showed this, right? Right? Now, what I want you to see is, right, and then there was also the fact that, you know, I had showed something else in that last show. And it was pertaining to, remember there was a letter, right? Remember that the family supposedly had found, or this had came up in the article, right? Remember it had said that Malcolm X family says letter shows NYPD and FBI conspired in his murder, right? And again, right, this came out in the article, and they said there was a letter. And remember I talked about how in that letter. And remember we talked about this individual here wrote this, Raymond A. Woods wrote this letter supposedly on his deathbed that ended up being put out there, right? Now, this here had came out prior to this, right? Let me show you this, okay? His letter claiming FBI and NYPD conspired to kill Malcolm X fake. Raymond Woods' daughter says not his signature, okay? Now remember, that was the letter that we showed here, right? Remember this here? You can see down at the bottom. Now, we wouldn't know what his signature looked like, but accordingly, the article came out talking about that. And it was saying how that is not true, that is fake. It's not real, right? And the daughter said that's not true. Okay, so by, you know, making a letter like that, right? If you make a letter like that, then aren't you taking away the fact that the letter would state, and then it was a cousin who's supposed to have been the one that he gave the letter to and made all the claims according to what his cousin told him to say once he died. But the daughter said he wasn't a coward. He would have not waited till he died. He would have stood on what it was. Now that's the daughter saying what she's saying. We're not gonna say that's not true. But then now what happens is, what's really going on here, right? What's really going on here, right? Right? What's really going on here? Because you got one report, you got people going out, and you got they being exonerated, but then you have the daughter saying that, what he wrote about saying about this and having their input is not true. Then you got the two people who's supposed to be in there with the part of put my hand, get your hand out my pocket. They ain't supposed to be there. So it's all a big mystery, right? It leaves a big mystery as into whatever happened to, right? Malika Shabazz, better known as Malcolm X, right? So I decided to say, okay, well, like the last story, keeping the code, right? Keeping the code into the end, then maybe that's what's happening here, right? So I said, well, let's just look at the history of this family. And what's inside the history is just the history, right? We just got to look at that's what it is. It's just the history. No more, no less. So what I'm going to do is show you some of this history, okay? Right? But let's go back to the letter, because the letter is the one that substantiated that supposedly, according to the person who was supposedly there and had his hands input in it, but they said that that wasn't true. So let me show you that they showed the daughter, right? She was on Spectrum News, New York 1, and as you see on your screen there, this was done February 26th of 2021. So this was actually earlier in the year, right? This is back in February, right? And so a letter purportedly from a retired NYPD officer accused the FBI and NYPD of being involved in Malcolm X's death. But Kelly Wood, the officer's daughter, told NY1 it's a fake and that he didn't write it, okay? That is her saying that her father didn't write that, okay? He did not write that. Now, do we know for a fact? No. But I see that according to what it's saying there, they're acknowledging that he's an officer. Now, again, the last show was not the first time I did the Raymond Wood. I did it in the show before where it was strictly solely on that letter and the whole ceremony and with the cousin, right? So I want you to listen to some of the stuff that she spoke on here, right? Now it says Kelly told N1 or New York 1 the letter was forged and her father's cousin only read it out loud so that he could gain publicity for himself. I know that my father did not write this letter, she told the cable news station. I know that it's not his signature, and I know the envelope they're using to somehow justify that the letter was mailed is also a fake, okay? So she's saying the whole letter, right? She said the letter is fake, right? Remember the letter that I showed you, right? I know you can't actually get all of it, but this is the copy of what they had presented. Let's put that back up on the screen. Put that back up on the screen. Now this is the letter that she's talking about, okay? This letter right here. So that's supposed to be the letter that's supposed to be in question that Miss Woods here is saying is not what you think it is, okay? So it goes on and it talks about how that she also added that it was not like her father to allow the release of a letter in public only after his November death to avoid facing its consequences. My father is not a coward. He wouldn't have never, ever asked anyone to speak on his behalf after his passing. If he had something to say, he would have said it when he was alive, she told NY1. Now, children know their parents to an extent, right? To the time you come into the world. Because let's look at it this way. Grandchildren know grandma, grandpa, right? You know granddaddy and grandma, right? To the extent you know them. but they were people before you got on the planet. And they done had some time, and they done worked that out. They done got mature. They ain't the people they used to be when they were younger. You know who you see. So I'm not saying that what she's saying is a lie. It could be just the fact that maybe if you think about this, and I will show you, because let's put it like this. There were people who were part of what they call the Bossy program, right? Which they call really it's called the GIP, right? Let's do this. It was called the GIP. So let's put that back up on. Let's put that up on there, right? So it was the GIP, and let me put her words up there so y'all can see what she said once again. And I'm gonna tell you about GIP. You know what GIP is? The Ghetto Informant Program. Have you ever heard of the Ghetto Informant Program? Right? So there were our people who actually were working as informants for the I guess you could say the FBI, right? I guess we can say the FBI, right? Okay, so this is how it went. All right, so it went like this. So what they call again is called the GIP, GIP, which is the acronym is known for Ghetto Informant Program. It was the intelligence gathering operation run by the Federal Bureau of Investigation from 1967 to 1973, accordingly. Now, its purpose was official to collect information pertaining to riots and civil unrest. That's what it originally was for. And they claimed that they had about 7,000 people who infiltrated black communities in the United States. So, remember, they had stated that her father, they say, again, remember in here, they said that they recognized him as an officer. Remember, they recognized him as an officer, right? Go back, right? Right in there, right? They say he's an officer, right? They say retired NYPD officer accused, right? They say it in there, right? Say it again, the officer's daughter, right? So they acknowledge him as that. So he was considered to be an officer. So I don't know, did he stay in there as an officer? Did he, graduate to be an officer? We don't know. But I do know that there was a program, and there was many people who at this particular time were actually part of this. And accordingly, it talks about how this fruition is based on Attorney General. His name was Ramsey Clark. He was the director to J. Edgar Hoover. And they talked about a letter that he had wrote that he believed that they had to deal with the possibilities of organized patterns of violence and those who are constituting a violation of federal laws by a group of persons who may be within this urban ghetto and using this as their operational base. Okay? And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to have eyes and ears down in the hoods, right? And so a part of this broad investigation, they said it needed to be conducted. They needed sources and informants in the black nationalist organizations. When you talk about SNCC and all these other organizations, they had to have people who would volunteer and be informants for them, right? And so keep this in mind. I want you to keep this in mind. And so why they had to have it according to what they were saying is because these groups, they wanted to know what was the development of them, how they were going to expand and determine how many people was part of them, the associations of other groups, their relationships, and always wanted to know the whereabouts of the people who would be involved that could be the ones instigating what they would say violence of federal law or violations of federal law. And so people who were on this list or informant monitor list would be people like Martin Luther King. You have Malcolm X, you have Elijah Muhammad. Stokely Carmichael, H. Rat Brown, Huey Newton, right? And people like that. And when you think about it, they talked about the individual who was with Martin Luther King, right? Ernest Withers was a paid informant under the GIP program, is what they acknowledge, right? And they say when you talk about the Black Party Panther, they had infiltrated many people were inside of the Black Party Panther as informants that were part of the GIP, right? So was her father a GIP, right? Because that part is not being mentioned. And is it possible it could have been? It's possible, right? It's very possible, right? And there's, again, a child only knows so much of his parents. There's a life before you get here. It's kind of like I seen the story about Richard. They're talking about the movie King Richard, and they're talking about how one of his first child from a previous marriage, she's out here and she is airing the laundry and saying that her father ain't no king, and that somehow he neglected them and put all his attention in them, and now they've gotten the riches from it, but we suffered through all this time. And I kind of wonder, well, who went to you to come bring all this out to try to, taint this image that is well needed for us as black people to have certain positive image. Yes, we're not perfect. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of things that along the way, bumps and grooves, and everything is not going to always be right. And you got to ask yourself the question, if he doesn't leave, then there is no Venus and Serena, right? And yet she wants to know them, and she also wants to have a relationship with the daughter. But again, if you're going to come out and you saying about the movie and how you feel and the things you associating with your father, but you said you got over all this, you know what I'm saying? They ain't the place and the time, and but anyway, you feel that kind of way. But that's her making her assessment of her father. But then based on what people are seeing, that's like asking Venus Serena to talk about their father. They're going to have a different perspective of the knowledge of they know of their father versus you. On the other half, you got the other end of it. You get what I'm saying? And so it's the same way I'm looking at this story here with this young lady who's saying about a father that wouldn't have did such a thing. Then you have to say, well, what is the motive of your cousin other than saying that he clout chasing, right? And so you're saying that it's fake signature, the letter that they're using, and mailing. Okay, so fine, all right, we're not going to knock that. You entitled to that. We're not saying that. But I'm just saying, if you do this and make this not to be what it is, now it's going to take away also the statements that's being used that's pointing the finger and saying who is, and then you have to ask yourself, who benefits from that? Who's going to benefit from that? So anyway, moving on. She said, to top it off, Kelly claimed that the signature on the letter was not her father's. The letter was read on Saturday, February 20th, at a press conference attended by three of Malcolm's daughters, Quibala Shabazz, Shabazz, and Gamala Shabazz. Civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump, Ray Hamlin, and Paul Napoli, and members of Wood's family. Okay? So the people of Wood's family was there. I think that would have been the time for you to go ahead and did that, right? But I'm not saying you didn't disagree. I mean, you didn't disagree and you went when you go and grandstand that mug. Don't let it go down like that. So why is family members there supporting that, right? Or maybe it's just his family, the one that was reading it, right? Okay. But anyway, let's read some more of it, right? Okay, no, not that. Okay, so with that being said, we have to also substantiate the possibility of this GIP, because it's real. It's not like it's fake. It's not like it's not real. Because let me show you something. When we talked about Malcolm being, assassinated, let's look at some of the stuff that had been, let's look at this GIP. Let's look at the GIP. Remember? And was your father a part of that? And, just like when we talk about the Groveland 4, and you've seen the family to get their name to get the case exonerated, to dismiss the case, and to clear their name. I get it. I understand why this sister is trying to say, that's not my father, that's not his signature, and so forth. Because now you have to live with, if that's who this to be true, then somehow you kind of living with the cloud of this was your father, right? So I get that. I really get that, right? So that's not to try to belittle the situation and say, nah, you know, she just, she has her reasons for that, and it's to be honored, right? But then there's other things that you're taking away if you substantiate that, right? So let's look at this gift. Let me show you some stuff that happened 7 years after Malcolm was assassinated. This had came out. So let me go ahead. Y'all ready to show this? And let's go ahead and show that.
You also active in the infiltration of many cultural groups. Before we go into that step by step, how much research and study did the FBI engage in of black culture in the late 60s?
A great amount.
Give me an idea.
From the thing is, I can, they have a file on every type of magazine that blacks read. They have a file on the music. Music, dance, theater, actors, comedians, you name it, man.
And they would actually study these different...
Yes. Oh, yes, definitely.
What would they do with music?
To understand the people, you have to understand the culture. To infiltrate, you have to understand. You had a lot of so-called white liberals that were infiltrating the so-called black groups, using the information that they had gathered from the studies of blacks.
You mean just to understand the behavior pattern of our people?
Oh yeah, I can, you know, Will Heaton could name out some jams of Miles Davis that I hadn't even heard of. He could name off some books that I hadn't even read pertaining to black culture.
Did you ever see agents actually studying the music of...
Yes. Yes, I've seen them going over even video portion of cultural events. The understanding, like when, okay, you have an organization like Leroy Jones' Black House. You remember that? Okay, Leroy Jones's place, which was done on the thing of tribalism. That's where I first heard the word Kintu, Mantu, Huntu, Hentu. These words of the African continuum. You know, I learned that from an agent. He ran it down to me. They make in-depth studies of the personalities of the people they're dealing with too, culturally. It always helps when it's the thing of, you can take their culture and use it against them.
Okay, so that is, his name is I think it's Dorthar Perry. I think that's what his name is, Dorthar Perry. And this was an interview done back in '77. And he was part of GIP. And what you heard him talk about is how when they infiltrate, right? He told you some things at the infiltration. So this GIP was real, right? The GIP was real, for real. You had people like himself who, you know, would do these things on the behest of calling himself working for these individuals, right? So they even talk about how, let's say for instance, you know, you have celebrities today, and people have a lot of mistrust with the celebrities, and they think that a lot of them are, you know, but according to him, at that particular time, he's going to tell you how celebrities were at that time. So let me let you hear this and be right back.
You mentioned Sammy Davis Jr., who at one time, it was reported, gave money to the Black Panther Party, I believe. Were you ever assigned to look into that?
Yes, I was told to try to get as close to Mr. Davis or to anyone in his office as I could. I used to go up and have real chit-chat, chummy conversation with his personal secretary, Ann, at the 9000 building on Sunset. And I used to bring a Porter-Pack video camera, and I used to go around and I would videotape the whole office.
You mean celebrities would be coming into his office and you'd film them freely?
Oh, yeah.
Didn't they question that?
I'm from the Ross Writers Workshop. Yeah, right on, brother, you know, that kind of thing. No questions asked. Same thing with the NAACP Image Awards. You know, they were very interested in people like Sammy Davis Jr. There was another black in Los Angeles that they were very interested in because, not Los Angeles, but in Sacramento, Nathaniel Colley, who's attorney for the NAACP. And I know Nat. And they wanted information on him, just for the simple reason that he's an attorney for the NAACP, which makes no sense to me, but must make a lot of sense to them because they use the information.
You've been called upon to testify in Washington. Before who?
Before the Senate committee. I was called first to testify before the church committee, and I did go to Washington, D.C. I did testify to those people, and I want to say right now that the committee was full of smack. They got loads and loads of information and didn't even use it, didn't release it. I had tapes that I offered to them in evidence against the Federal Bureau of Investigation with conversations of me and my supervising officers where he's telling me to obtain certain articles for him by stealing. Don't get fingerprints on it. We can really use that. Did you take the weapons over to such and such? The church's committee told me that they couldn't use the tapes because the tapes were gotten by illegal means.
All right, so we back, right? So again, he's giving you insight into being an informant, right? Part of the GIP program, right? Is what they did, right? So again, going back to the Raymond A. Woods letter on the stuff he has said, they're admitting that he's an officer, but how did he initially get in? And I also showed back in when I did originally that story, they had it in the newspaper, and I'm not saying they can't fabricate that to substantiate a lie, to validate the lie, but it was in there about Raymond A. Woods getting these the security people for Malcolm's event for the auto ballroom to have them go to have a plot to go blow something up, and they somehow fell for it, and they got locked up, will allow the situation to be unsurveillance as it was. I mean, not unsurveillance, but unsecure as it was, right? And so, okay, so you hear this individual here, he giving you some insight, but let me show you maybe one of the real reasons why she is saying what she's saying, because look at some of the stuff they had to do. And check this out. Be right back.
How large would you say an extensive collection on our culture would you say the FBI has? Would you rate it as large as a particular library, like the Schomburg Library in Harlem? Or?
I would rate it better. I would rate it better, and the fact is that they go into details that we probably would overlook. Will Heaton used to meet me in different places. You know, Will Heaton, that was one of my supervising agents. There is a certain bar in the Los Angeles area where people into black cultural things met, and Will Heaton used to meet me there. And he would go into very long and tiring conversations with some very articulate brothers about culture, African culture, and Afro-American culture.
Tell me about some of the cultural organizations that you infiltrated and what you did.
PASLA, Mafunde, Watts Writers Workshop, which they have.
The Watts Writers Workshop?
Yes. Watts Writers Workshop, which was one of the oldest established black writers workshop.
That place was burned down.
Yeah. The Bureau had it burnt down.
How do you know that?
I know because I participated. I did the arson.
You burned down the Watts Writers Workshop?
Yes.
Why did they want it to go?
At the time, funding had been cut to the workshop, had been cut out, but it looked like there was a possibility of a grant being given back to the workshop. And if there was no theater, there would be no grant.
How did you do it?
2 cans of kerosene, Purex bottle, gasoline, and a flare, highway flare.
Why didn't you use more sophisticated stuff?
Oh, no. No. You're never overly sophisticated. It's too obvious. This way you make it look like, maybe somebody in the neighborhood that got kicked out of theater at one time got mad and came and burned the damn theater up, that kind of thing.
But you were involved in this theater? I mean, did it get to you at all what you were?
Hey, man, that got to me a great deal. I love that theater. I built the stage.
You built the stage?
Oh, yeah. When I got to the workshop, the stage that had been, the original stage that had been built needed an extension on it. The original part of the stage was in terrible condition. They had no lighting system. I put the lighting system in myself. I put the stage in myself. And that was a stage, man. And that was a theater. It's a nice theater.
Who was the director of that workshop?
Harry Dolan.
Harry Dolan. Some very, very well-known artists supported that workshop, gave money to it.
Some very well-known artists came out of the Watts Writers Workshop. Glenn Tubman, Yaphet Kotto. Sidney Poitier used to come down there and give a class. Sammy Davis Jr. used to come down there all the time. Quincy Jones used to come there and give music classes. We had our own 8-track studio setup for sound. We had our own sound room there.
Hey, you sitting here watching the video. Why you sitting there? Put your hand on that like button, click it, thumbs it up, share this video, comment. You can like or dislike it. We don't care about that. And also, if you ain't over here and subscribe, what you waiting on? Get yourself over there and subscribe to get on up to WeUpReport so you can stay up, because we're going to keep you up. That's how you help keep this channel going. You can also do some monetary donations. We'll tell you about that later. But right now, wake yourself up, like, share, and comment. And don't forget, when you subscribe on that button, hit that put all notifications. You know. All right. So, once again, you can understand why that sister will come out and be like, my father, you understand? My father didn't do that. My father, you get what I'm saying? If you hear the things that he's talking about, this Dorthar Perry, right? And the stuff that he's relaying as being part of GIP. You know when people talk about when we build stuff and then stuff can't get made because they always infiltrating? You heard he say what he did to the center. He burned it down. And he wanted to burn it down because it was producing in the community, right? He helped build it, but he was the one that burned it down. Can you imagine? It's like meeting the sellouts and the coons amongst us and getting to know who they is, and they telling you, Yeah, I was the one that did this and did this, right? So here's this sister whose father is to be labeled this and supposedly had a letter that's stating that what he did, right? Because even in that letter, he also said remorse, just like this being said here, right? Listen to this and we'll be right back.
Did you ever suffer pangs of conscience?
Quite a few times. Quite a few times. I still suffer pains of conscience. I suffer from the fact that a lot of people trusted me and I misused that trust. I suffer from the fact that a lot of information that I gave out was the undoing of certain groups or certain people. I suffer from the fact that I'm on the run constantly. I have no real life to speak of.
You have no family life, really? You have a wife?
No, I don't have a wife. I do have a child. I can't see her that often. I have to stay away from them because once I come around, the Bureau shows up and harassment starts. I have very few close personal friends, no one to really confide in. It's like being on the outside of a glass jar and everything is happening inside the jar, but you're on the outside. You can see it happening, but you can't participate.
Why have you decided to talk to me?
For the simple reason, I think this information should be getting out, should be put out to the public. I think not only black people, but everyone should become aware of what your so-called law enforcement agencies do to so-called enforce the law. Because between you, myself, and the audience, I've seen more felons in law enforcement than I have in prison.
Okay? So that's coming right from one individual. Now, according to GIP, said they had over 7,000, right? But this is one out of 7,000 out of many thousands, right? Who give you some insight as to what they were doing. And are they still prevalent today? So this sister that was saying that this is not her father, right? You can understand why she's trying to say that, because even he is telling you pains of conscience, meaning remorse, meaning he did things that now, looking in hindsight, that how much detriment he did to his own people. At the time, he was blinded and could not see. So, who benefits based on what the sister's saying? And, well, could, all right, so anyway, I ain't going to go no more there because that's her thing. She has the right to do that, right? But now what we're going to do, we're going to explore more of this GIP so that more people will have a better understanding that the thoroughness of what they establish as GIP, even people who are famous, based on this article that had came out, you tell me what you think, because sometimes you can be a willing participant in something unbeknownst to you, or it appears you do not know, or you have full acknowledgement of it, but may be surprising to some and maybe others it may not be. So, as I was saying earlier about how Dorothy Perry talked about having celebrities who were contributing some of their professional knowledge, know-how, and skills back into the community, and then him being a part of them destroying that because of what it could have fruition. And then today there's a stigmatization that goes along with people who are part of this class of people will be your entertainers, which they call really your black elites, celebrities and athletes, and those who make a certain amount of money can be part of this. And so that separates us from them. And then the stigmatization comes that they don't care, they don't, let's say, support. But then some of them don't realize the reason why people look at them like that. Let me give you a little quick history as to somebody that many of us all know. Some of you might be too young to know, and then there's other of us who know. I see skies of blue, red, right? That's Louis Armstrong, right? But there was something in Louis Armstrong's life that either he know or he didn't know. But let me give you this information. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back after that. With that, well, let's go ahead and get into it. We'll take the break afterwards. All right, so let's go ahead and show this, right? So, right, Louis Armstrong and the spy, how the CIA used him as a Trojan horse in Congo. Let me say that one more again. Louis Armstrong and the spy, how the CIA used him as a Trojan horse in Congo. Now, all this is at the time, talking about how GIP, right, being created, but this is actually a little bit before then, right? But it's all is going to be synonymous once you see in this particular story of how they talked about Louis Armstrong and how he was used as a Trojan horse. And when we hear the term Trojan horse, just like it's like the story of the Trojan horse. The horse was there as I guess it let down the enemy's head, did not realize that the enemies were inside of it, and got out, and then he was able to overthrow you, right? So Louis Armstrong, unbeknownst to himself, became part of that, and maybe he didn't know that, right? So let me show you what they talked about in here. So the trumpeter, singer, and band leader, nicknamed Satchmo, as a child, was in the middle of a tour of Africa that would stretch over months, organized and sponsored by the State Department in a bid to improve the image of the United States and dozens of countries which had just won freedom from colonial regimes. And there's that word, colonial, right? Talking about colonize earlier. That means for somebody to come in, take over your resource, make it a warehouse, distribute it, and make profit, and subjugate the inhabitants, the indigenous, the aboriginals of the land. So again, Satchmo being Louis Armstrong. That was his nickname as a child. So according to this, he's going to do a tour in Africa. Now, today, in this day and time, a lot of people are talking about trying to go back to the motherland, repatriating back to the land, taking economics and trying to build a system, some kind of foundation. It's not a bad thing to do. But sometimes we don't know all the stories, and we want to believe that because we leave from one place that seems to be, I call it the standard of civilization. Some says white supremacy. But to traverse to other places because you believe that what's happening where you left from is not happening where you're going. But that's because you are not too familiar with your history. So what we're going to do on part of WeUpReport is to give you to fill in some of these blanks. Now, some people have a problem with people going A through Z with their shows and topics because they believe people need to be more intelligent. But myself, I deal with the people who everybody else discards and says, well, they all can't be saved. Well, did you try? See, it's easy to throw away some people, especially if you come and you cut from the cloth that come from people and knowing how we've been disenfranchised, and you just happen to be from a family that had some people that had some intelligence and brains, and then they set a certain foundation about how to be educated and so forth, or you've been around people who gave it to you, you got the game. That don't mean everybody else, as the majority of them don't have it. So what happens is, just like you've seen so far in this story by Dorothy Perry, when they tried to make places for the community to come, what would end up happening? They would destroy them. So what ended up happening? Well, right? So what would happen is the community would start losing a lot of their most powerful people and start moving away from those communities. Now they don't have the visuals of seeing professional people, educated people, getting to fraternize with them to, again, steal, sharpen, steal. And what ended up happening? You only have those who are of continual, non-educated, blue-collar working, deprived, impoverished people. And once in a while they say roses grows out of concrete. So what I'm going to show here is that you can take somebody who would seem to have everything and still can be used by them. Right? So anyway, let me get into this more because I don't want to miss the point on this. So we see that Satchmo is going to go to Africa. Like I said, there's people who want to go back to Africa, and there's a positive thing because according to the story that we've been told, not all of us agree with it, but what we've been told, that 500 years ago we were all put on boats and came to the place that we call reside now in the United States. That's how some people who believe when they read that history. And there's others who say we were here prior, even before this whole event of this story, as you heard early in the beginning of the show, the Christopher Columbus story, right? So anyway, so you would think that somebody would take this opportunity. I'm going to do a tour. I want to go there anyway. Well, sure, fine. But he's sponsored by the State Department. Now, what interest would they have involved in having Satchmo, Louis Armstrong, a trumpeter? Again, his songs are being popularized, and you know how it is. It's been going back for some time. The entertainers and athletes and so forth that are produced, made out of the product of black Americans here in this country are taken and propagated worldwide to give the United States that connectivity with those people who have that kind of affinity, as let's say we use Africa as a connector. And so when they see that, that entices them to say, well, maybe we need to come there too. So they use you as the commercialism to come here, and how much better. Okay, fine. And also the fact that you believe you have ties, and I'm not saying we don't have any ties, but in this case, he would go there. He said, okay, fine, all right. But he's not questioning all that. He just, okay, you want me to do this, and I'm going to do this. Now, he's going there at a time where they say these countries are just now winning their freedom from colonial regimes, right? So they have been colonized and supposedly are independent. Many people hear that term independent and really take it for its face value of what it means, right? People will take, you have a lot of people who take things literally and say the word independent means they are free from any encumbrance, any foreign powers, all that, right? That's what a lot of people think, right? When you say that word. But the truth of the matter is, you may not be as independent. You might be independent on paper, right? You might be independent on paper, but not necessarily in actions and actuality, right? Independent is not dependent on something or someone, right? That's basically what you're saying that. Able to live well without labor. Huh? Labor from who? Being subjugated with colonial regimes, right? So now they have relinquished supposedly their power according to what's on paper, but we can see that the country in itself to this day seems to be still struggling with trying to run on its own. So anyway, this is what he's being called over there. He feels this a duty of his, and he's willing to go and traverse this. So let's go and see some more about this. So what Armstrong did not know was that his host that night in November 1960 was not the political attaché as described, but the head of the CIA in Congo. He was also totally unaware of how his fame had allowed a spy who was making small talk across the starter to gain crucial information that would facilitate some of the most controversial operations of the entire Cold War. Okay? Armstrong. Yeah, you know, sometimes, again, people are great at what they do. You know, it's kind of like that time where they tried to tell LeBron when he was trying to speak out, shut up and just dribble the basketball. Well, same thing here. Why don't you sing for me? Huh? Remember that 5 Heartbeats? When the police pulled them over? Y'all singers. Why don't you sing for me? So why don't you, Lewis, go over here and blow that trumpet for me? Right? So he's under the whim of thinking that that's what he do. That's what he known for. He don't see nothing wrong. But he not understanding that his entourage that's going to be part with him, stealthily is going to sneak in with him, and this covert, controversial operation, as they say, when you talk about that Cold War, they believe that this was a key component in utilizing this opportunity to do something that they feel is a key factor in that, right? But some of y'all who didn't know, some of you didn't know, right? So let's see what they're talking about here. Armstrong was basically a Trojan horse for the CIA. That's what they say. It's genuinely heartbreaking. He was brought in to serve as an interest that was completely contrary to his own sense of what was right or wrong. He would have been horrified, said Susan Williams, a research fellow at London University School of Advanced Study and author of White Malice, a new book which exposes the astonishing extent of the CIA's activity across Central and West Africa in the 1950s and early 60s. Now, according to what it's saying here, looks like Louis Armstrong has no knowledge about what he's being used for. He doesn't know that government has an operation. According to this person who's writing this book, this Susan Williams, is stating that he would have been horrified to know, it would have been contrary to his own sense of what he believed in right and wrong, that he would not have agreed to this. But unbeknownst to him, and a lot of times it's like people who sign contracts, right? You need a lawyer to discern the verbiage, right? The legalese, because they got it written in such a way. So the same way that they cloaked in by having you going, this is what you normally do. You don't understand the extent of what the purpose of you being there. So we see this is what they use it for. And again, this goes to show that sometimes you have people who do things in the business that they in and they don't understand the four corners of everything that why you do it. It's like saying people have the debates and talk about whether men should be in dresses, right? And that if not, it's like you are, homophobic, right? Or you have a homophobia, and they try to intertwine it with you having issues with people of the alphabet community and insecurities of your masculinity and all this other stuff, right? And what are the seeds that's being sprinkled and how are the four corners of this being used? Some people can't have far sight to see that. They can only see what's in front of them. But once you become a little older, a little wiser and understand the game, you start to see and understand how certain people play the game, right? And that's how it goes, right? But ignorance is bliss is because when you don't know, people run game on you all day, every day. So let's go on and see some more about what they said in this article. Documents found by Williams in the archives of the UN during 5 years of research strongly suggest that the Armstrong's host The CIA station chief, Larry Devlin, and other U.S. intelligence officers posted to Congo used the cover of the musician's visit to get access to the strategically important and very wealthy province of Katanga, which had recently succeeded. The United States, though sympathetic to the agenda of the province leader, had not officially recognized the self-declared government there. Okay? So accordingly, as this is stating here, there were some documents that were found. And these documents were part of, during the UN, the 5 years research. And for some odd reason, in these documents, in this paper, in this data, somebody had the grandiose idea to realize that, you know what? The place we're trying to get in, and the person who is now going to be ruling after we have now, they becoming getting their independence, we come to find out that this person kind of likes, I like skies of blue, red, white, right? Louis Armstrong, right? And so the station chief, name was Larry Devlin, almost look like devil, right? Larry Devlin, who was stationed in the Congo, believed this would be a grand opportunity to use the musician's visit, because this province of Katanga, somebody got their eye on it. Somebody's looking at this as the reason we need to get ourselves up in there, right? Now again, they say that the United States is sympathetic to the agenda of the province leader, right? So the person who is the leader of this, according to where they're writing this, that the United States don't have a problem or issue with them, right? It's looked like it's more about this individual here, who this Devlin cat is, and what his agenda is, as if he is not really tied in, right? Okay. And so, you know, when there's power and there is the transfer of power, right? There's where there's going to be, like, let's say, for instance, after the November election, and say the sitting president loses it, what they call he's in this lame duck turn, but he's still got to fulfill his 4 years to get to January, right? And then the elected new president will come in January, well, I don't know if it's 20th or whatever the date it might be, comes in. So there's a transitional period between old power into the new. So it looks like during this transition, according to what it says on here on your screen, that they were sympathetic. They don't have a problem. They just have not recognized the self-declared government there yet, because it was still in transition of those who were of the colonial regimes supposedly being relinquishing, and then this new one that's being established. So there's a gray area right here, right? So this is the opportunity. We're going to do it. That way, you understand? But anyway. All right, so let's go and look at some more of this. Let's look at some more of this, right? Right, okay. All right, so this says there was much of interest to the CIA in Katanga, ranging from senior officials with whom they could not otherwise meet to crucial mining infrastructures. With 1,500 tons of uranium and vast potentials to procure more, Armstrong's tour to Katanga was the perfect opportunity. So Devlin and others flew down from the capital with the musician and his famous band. They needed a cover, and this gave them one, said Williams. Okay? All right, there was a lot of interest. I don't know why this particular institution, faction of the government, was eyeing on it. But they had an interest. The coroner said some of the interests of this mining infrastructure, right? It was crucial mining infrastructure that's going on in here. They even had estimated how much it was, 1,500 tons of uranium, right? And the potential to even make that even greater. So, all right, so we talk about uranium, and you know what uranium is used for. And here was the opportunity. Somebody used to control it, but they still got to play the game. Well, they still got to allow the transition of the new And then so now they'll control it, and then whatever negotiation we deal with it. So, maybe somebody said, well, hey, they're not going to play the game the way we want to play. So they got their eyes on it. So they're setting up the game, right? That's what's happening. That's what's happening. Now remember, all this stuff that's happening, Louis Armstrong has no idea that this is all that's in the background, right? Doesn't see all this in the background. And that's how it goes. See, sometimes you hear people talking about certain things and not understanding there are other things that are happening other than the stuff that you're seeing in front of you, especially younger people who hear certain people and they think it's all about since your existence. Man, this world been going on long before we all got here. It's like watching, when we in the hood in the summertime, you see the sisters out there double dutch, right? But before you see somebody jumping in a rope, you see the sisters turning that rope. And the sister that's trying to get in, she's trying to do what? She's trying to time it. She's trying to time to jump into the rope so that she can keep, without any hiccups, without any interruption, the same velocity, the same turns, in the same old minute. It's like nothing is going on. See, that's what we have to do when we get into this game and when we start understanding. You got to learn how to get into the game as it's been moving so that you can catch up and understand how this thing is playing. You understand what I'm saying? But anyway. So, otherwise, you're getting abused by it, right? So, okay. But anyway, let's move on. So, they said there was something else that Armstrong, who had pulled out of a similar tour to the Soviet Union 3 years earlier in protest at racism in the United States, did not know that the CIA in Congo, led by Devlin, was trying to kill the Congo first democratically elected prime minister, 35-year-old Patrice Lumumba. Fearful that he would lead the country into a Soviet camp, historians now believe that the nationalist leader wanted his country to remain neutral in the Cold War, right? So it's just sitting there saying in front of your face, Armstrong. Why you see that Susan Williams said that it probably would have blew his mind and messed him up is because 3 years prior, he was supposed to have gone to the Soviet Union. And him going to the Soviet Union was him in protest about racism in the United States, according to what they're saying here, right? That's what you see on your screen, right? It's coming out of the article. So he pulled out of that, right? He pulled out of that. And so end up from that, now they done repositioned him. Now he's going to the Congo under being a Trojan horse for something he may not even know, right? And the target, according to what they say in this article, that now that we can look back in history and see, they talk about the first democratically elected prime minister. At that age of 35 years old was Patrice Lumumba, right? And those who study that history know what ended up happening, right? But did you know about this part? A lot of people may not have known. So let's see. Can we do that? Yeah, let's do that, and then we come back. How about that? Let's do that. Yeah, do that, and then we'll come right back. Yeah, that's what the best thing to do. Go ahead. We'll be right back. Hey, you sitting here watching the video. Why you sitting there? Put your hand on that like button, click it, thumbs it up, share this video, comment. You can like or dislike it. We don't care about that. And also, if you ain't over here and subscribe, what you waiting on? Get yourself over there and subscribe to get on up to We Up Report so you can stay up because we're going to keep you up. That's how you help keep this channel going. You can also do some monetary donations. We'll tell you about that later. But right now, wake yourself up, like, share, and comment. And don't forget, when you subscribe on that button, hit that put all notifications. You know how. All right, we are back, right? So we back. So it goes on, it says now, within 2 months of Armstrong's tour, Lumumba was murdered in Katanga by officials of the breakaway province and police officers from Belgium. Mobutu would later consolidate his hold on Congo and become a loyal U.S. client. Okay? So, 60 days into Louis Armstrong's tour, Patrice Lumumba ended up being murdered. Now, can I say for a fact that he knew? No one can say. But according to this article, said that he was a Trojan horse, but whether he knew or not is another thing. But how they was able to do it is through that, right? So so history kind of just reveals sometimes the hidden, right? Remember, ironicness of things, how those things fruition themselves and end up showing maybe some things that had been hidden, right? So it ends out saying that that Devlin, he later claimed that the CIA was responsible, telling a U.S. congressional investigation that the coup of Mobutu was arranged and supported and indeed managed by the CIA. So he turned states. I didn't do this. They told me to do this, right? They the one made me do this, right? He turned on them, right? And he named names, I guess, right? But the thing is, we have to look at this and realize that everything that is seen is never, so everything that is glitter ain't gold. And sometimes people who are facilitators and using these institutions have their agendas for why they do what they do, right? And sometimes you have people, especially when you talk about in this black corner of YouTube, you have had a 3 tidal wave tsunami. Let me say that again. There has been a 3-wave tsunami come through recently in the black corner. Who knows the 3 tidal waves that came in? I'm not going to name it. I'm going to leave that for somebody who want to go in the comment section. Is who was the recent 3 tsunamis that came in and kind of really was changing the direction that the black corner had worked so hard through, let's say, through 2019 up to 2020. I even say before then, but it really took momentum, I think, between 19 and 20. And then the tsunami, one phenomena after another phenomena after another phenomena came through the corner, tried to redirect, but after the storm, we still here, right? But they still working on time because, they about to change up the game once again, I think at the January. So, and that's just how it is, right? But we just got to understand, all these apparatuses and things are used in ways that may be unbeknownst to many of us, right? And so when you think about what happened there with Louis Armstrong, now, what is the connection there as you were talking about the ironicness, Mr. Mrblowsurmind? Wait, I mean, you said ironic this, you said, so forth and so on. Somehow, how does that tie into what you're talking about? Well, let's put it this way. Patrice Lumumba, right, is the person who Malik Shabazz tried to connect with because he wanted to really, he was learning the game from an international part, and he didn't agree with what was going on here in the United States when, the civil rights movement, right? Because really, when you think about it, what's the difference between civil rights and human rights? Because Malcolm was trying to do human rights, right? So, I guess a short way to look at it is civil rights would be let's put it this way, human rights is things that you just get for just being alive, right? You acquire them just being alive, human rights, right? But civil rights is kind of limited, right? When you think about it, civil rights is really limited. It's just being, a legal member of a certain political state, meaning you have the right to vote, the right to fair trial, the right to government services, public education, using public facilities, right? So there's some limitations in civil rights. Human rights it's like instead of giving me a slice of the pie, I want to eat the whole pie, right? And also, when you also think about human rights, you're talking about right to life, liberty, freedom, pursuit of happiness. So that's, freedom of discrimination and things like that, right? That sounds like the Constitution, right? Human rights seem like the Constitution, and civil rights seem like just the amendments. You get what I'm saying? Adding you in certain, we're going to deal with you in only certain capacities based because the civil right laws say we have to. But if they're going to treat you as a human, then everything that has been written from the beginning, from the inception, no need to add no 13, 14, 15, right? But a lot of people like to play in there. But that's just civil rights, right? That's your civil rights, human rights. And Malcolm was trying to fight for human rights, right? Which is probably, which we could see, has been a no-no, right? No, you're not doing that, sir. You're not doing that. Right? So let's look at let me because matter of fact, when you think about that, Malcolm went over to Africa, right? And people read about it, they heard the story and so forth, what took place. And he had an incident that happened to him when he went over to Egypt, I think, right? And I seen this in this article relating to that. Because remember, we're going to talk about the fact that the Shabazz family, as I'm making the correlation to the Kennedys and the tragedies that then happened in the Shabazz family, are very similar to the Kennedy's family, but there are for the different existence of each one of what they're doing. And I just want to bring this as information because, again, we're just looking at the fact that Malika Shabazz, after the announcement of those being exonerated, supposedly being complicit in the killing of her father, had been exonerated as having no ties to it, right? The person who ended up writing a letter as into admission, the daughter comes out and says he didn't do, right? And though people that is stated in there had no affiliations to it, right? And then 5 days later, you have Malika dying, which again, it could have been of natural causes, as they say in the, having illness and so forth, right? Fine. So I just said, wow, the family has gonna have a lot of tragedies, right? And so we're just gonna put this history together. So I want to show you that's something I had seen, and it talks about how they said Real Black History Month, Malcolm X, Evidence of U.S. Intelligence Assassination, written by Jeffrey, but it has no last name, so we don't know how real this is, but they put that out there, right? And so according to what they said in here, some of the stuff that I had seen and read in here, they were talking about how, go ahead, you can put that up there, go ahead, right? Said at a Cairo restaurant, Malcolm said that just as he felt the poison in his food, he realized that he recognized the waiter as someone he saw in New York. Rushed to the hospital. He was barely saved by stomach pumping. The attending doctor said there was poison in his food. Malcolm had been concerned about NOI death threats, but he knew that they didn't have a global spy capacity. Okay? So he went to Cairo. Somebody poisoned his food. He ended up getting rushed to the hospital. Didn't pump his stomach, get it out in time. He may have died over there, right? But something about the waiter and what he recognized, but they didn't really disclose who that was, right? Now, he said he had issues knowing that, based on the stuff he had been talking about Elijah Muhammad in the news and so forth, and organization people wanted to see him dead, right? But he understood that they didn't have that kind of reach. So who would have had that kind of reach? Well, that's what he was saying, right? So goes on and tells that Malcolm X believed that the U.S. intelligence further set up his near-fatal poisoning in Cairo, Egypt, in late July of 1964. He said CIA agents made their presence obvious to try and intimidate him as he traveled through Africa. They didn't want him to present his planned United Nations proposal with African leaders to declare the U.S. was violating American blacks' human rights, right? Civil rights, human rights. There's a difference between the two. Human rights is encompassing me in the whole pie. What you written, right? That's what based on the rights, life, liberty, freedom, pursuit of happiness. That's the Constitution, right? Civil rights is, you can come in a facility. We'll give you some public education. Government services, yeah, we'll give you that. What? Free trial? Yeah, we can give you that. Right to vote? Yeah, we do that. Yeah, we're going to sign a bill every 50 years. We're going to debate whether we're going to let you vote again. Right? Free trial? Yeah. Guilty until you're proven innocent. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Government services? Well, they ever equate to welfare. That's all they get with us, right? Public education, right? Depending on your tax bracket, or where you reside, what kind of quality education. Public facilities, still to this day, you can go to certain places, they will not serve you or find a way to get you up out of there, right? So that's civil rights. Now, if you got human rights, you can abolish all that and more, right? So this is what Malcolm was trying to do, right? That's what he was trying to do, right? So it goes on to talk about Gene Roberts revealed his undercover police agent status as a trial against the Black Panthers in 1971. Roberts had followed members of Malcolm X, OAAU, as they started the New York Panther chapter. Under cross-examination at the trial, Roberts said he was the first to arrive at Malcolm's body and proceeded to give Malcolm X mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. But Roberts revealed more in interviews decades later with support that his real role appeared to be checking Malcolm X's vital signs to confirm the assassination success. This next one here, I'm showing as part of just to give the visual to it. So we will give this as part of that.
Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Okay. Again, I don't do this out of any disrespect. This is all for educational purposes and just part of presentation. So we see that, as you heard, it says that Gene Roberts revealed that he was an undercover police agent. And all this came out when they did the trial for the Black Panthers in 1971. He had trailed the people who had been part of the OAAU to end up eventually starting the New York Panther chapter. And in the court cross-examining of that, in that trial, it came out that Roberts said that he was the one that gave mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to Malcolm X. Then he said based on what had been presented, and this, again, showing this, right? Right, top right corner, you see somebody doing mouth-to-mouth to Malcolm. Now remember, they put this was in Life magazine, right? Right. I don't want to keep that up there because it's showing Malcolm in that position. But that's the individual they're talking about. I don't know, again. See, we see the one in the top top right corner there. Right? Okay. So he said that his real role looks to be like he's checking Malcolm to help him to resuscitate him, but he was really there to make sure that the job was done. Okay? That's what he said, right? So, I don't know if anybody knew about this. Talk about how the U.S. intelligence had made several attempts on Malcolm's life early in his development. In 1958, New York detective shot up Malcolm's ex-office. I don't think it was his office, I think it was his house, for which the city settled with Malcolm in a $24 million suit. FBI uncovered agent John X. Ali, who infiltrated the Nation of Islam, could provide the floor plan since he was living with Malcolm at the time. So, I remember, if y'all remember, in the Malcolm X movie, remember it showed that Malcolm had won a lawsuit? Like he won the lawsuit? But they never said what the lawsuit really was for, right? They never said that. But Malcolm had $24 million. Where did that money go to? Because according to the way that, the movie depicted, Betty was mad because they didn't have nothing, right? They didn't have no monies, right? So who got the money? And then the person who they say, when you read this story, and the person who become the right-hand man, that's going to be, he was living with Malcolm. Wow. Right? Did you, huh? You get what I'm saying? Right? So, okay, so that means that there's been people always around him, his family, and so forth, right? Okay, so let's get into some other parts of his family, right? Let's get a little bit more to other people in the family. Like, let's say, let's see. Especially when you talk like that. Okay, so let's just say, with that being said, right? Let's say when they're talking about, that John Ali X being Nation of Islam, being part of maybe the GIP program or just part of the agency in itself, right? So, remember there was a time when they talked about this. Maybe y'all remember this. When Malcolm X's daughter was arrested over plot to kill Louis Farrakhan, right? Right? When Malcolm X's daughter was arrested over plot to kill Louis Farrakhan. Okay? Now, accordingly, this is what supposedly had took place. And as you see, August 22nd, 2022, this was written. And let me give you some background according to what they wrote in this article here, right? Let's get into that a little bit here, because it has its significance in it, right? Let's go ahead, let's get into this. Okay, so, right? So it says, Shabazz was arrested in Minneapolis on federal charges of trying to hire a hitman to kill Louis Farrakhan, minister of the Nation of Islam. Shabazz believed that Farrakhan was responsible for her father's assassination. Farrakhan, who was Malcolm X's Muslim disciple before turning rival, had said at the time that he had no role in Malcolm X's murder. Okay? So Shabazz, being one of his daughters, and we'll reveal that as we go on, she ended up getting arrested. Supposedly there was a plot to hire to kill Louis Farrakhan. Because from her understanding, what she believed to know, that there were some implications by Louis Farrakhan killing her father. So she was trying to revenge for her father, right? So it goes on and talks about history reported. Now, I don't know who his history reported is. That Michael Fitzpatrick, a high school classmate of Shabazz, claimed that she called him and asked him to kill Farrakhan, adding that she feared for her mother's life. Unbeknownst to Shabazz, Fitzpatrick was already an FBI informant. He swiftly passed on the information and started recording the conversations they both had. Okay? Wait a minute. Remember what I said about with Malcolm, and then said, his family, and then what happened to him, and then we see that what takes place in his own home, and then there's a person that's even living with him. Now look at it. This is one of the children, and one of the children's classmate that she went to school with. Somehow she confides in this person, and this person is actually end up being what? An informant. Huh? Wow. Think about that. Think about that. All right? Moving on. Following Shabazz's arrest, her court-appointed federal public defender, Scott Tilson, said that she had been set up by the man who was supposed to assassinate Farrakhan. We believe the evidence will show that the other person at all times was working for the government and that she was seduced into this whole alleged scheme to kill Farrakhan. Tilson said, adding that the man was having problems with the FBI and wanted to improve his standing with federal agents. Okay? So all this information eventually came out, going through the court proceeding. And so the person who's going to end up defending the Shabazz daughter is stating that she'd been set up. That, yeah, she was recorded, but she was kind of seduced in getting to say the talking points with the person who has an agenda because they got issues, and so they trying to set you up to help them to get out of their situation, right? They use the fact that, I went to school, possibly. Again, this is the way it's being, right? I went to school, so, and matter of fact, we still be conversating and, enticing, right? So, okay, this is what they're saying, right? All right. So 2 years after Shabazz's legal troubles, her mother, Betty, was severely burned in the fire at her apartment. At her apartment. Betty's 12-year-old grandson, Malcolm, who was Shabazz's child, had set the fire deliberately, officials said. Child welfare workers had taken the boy from her mother's home on suspicions of neglect. He was therefore living with his grandmother, Betty, when in June of 1997, he doused a hallway of the apartment with gasoline and set the fire because he was angry he had to live with her. Okay? So some people will dispute that. Some people say he may not have did that. Court documents will say he agreed and said he did it, right? But 2 years after his mother is supposed to be the one that is going after Louis Farrakhan, then her mother ended up being killed based on the fact of this fire, right? Or dies later on after this. And they say it is the first of the male seed of the offspring of Malcolm through his children, his progenies, right? And based on him not being able to live, he became angered, supposedly lit the gasoline in the hallway, and ended up causing Betty Shabazz to be severely burned, right? So we see tragedy is happening, right? One after another after another. Things are happening under suspicious circumstance, right? So now let's look at what the grandson, right? The same one, right? So we see that Malcolm X's grandson reportedly killed in Mexico. Now they reported on May 10th. I think it happened on the 9th, if I'm not mistaken, right? It happened on the 9th. So Malcolm X's grandson is reportedly killed in Mexico. Okay? And so, matter of fact, let's, that we even, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. That's fine. Right? All right, so Shabazz was reportedly in Mexico as part of his work with RUMEC, R-U-M-E-C, a labor and construction group in California. One of the group's leader, Miguel Suarez, was deported to Mexico in April. Okay? For those who never heard the story, right? He's a supporter of our organization, RUMEC. Juan Ruiz says of Shabazz in an interview with Talking Point Memo, he went on to Mexico to meet with Miguel. Ruiz said that while he hadn't been in Mexico for the meeting, he had spoken to Suarez, who he says was present when Shabazz was attacked. Okay? We heard but maybe some people never heard this part of the story. So, okay, let's go on. Now, according to prosecutor Rodolfo Fernando Real Garza, Shabazz arrived in Mexico City at the behest of Miguel Suarez, Mexican labor activist with the organization Revolutionary United Mexican in, I think that's Comat or RUMEC, whom he had befriended in the United States and had been recently deported to Mexico. I apologize because it's a little fainted on my side too, right? So accordingly, what comes out in the law, they start naming people who's supposed to, and how the story goes down, right? That's what they say, right? Then on the night of May 9th of 2013, while at the Palace Club, a downtown bar, prosecutors contended that Shabazz consumed several drinks, saying he had a blood alcohol level of more than 3 times the legal limit for driving in the United States allegedly. He and Suarez ran up a $1,200 bar tab, which included the companionship of women, after being bamboozled by local hustlers who routinely prey on tourists. And think about that. You go on there on the calls, you trying to take up the mantle, kind of the family business, y'all become activists. And then to take you out of the United States, you end up going down to Mexico. Right? And you get down there, somebody you meeting, y'all going to hang out, So let's see how this goes. It says the pair tried to leave the bar at around 3 a.m. A confrontation occurred with 2 waiters, David Hernandez Cruz, 26, and Perez de, they don't say Jesus, Jesus, right? Shabazz and Suarez were supposedly separated by bar employees at gunpoint, but for unknown reasons, only Shabazz was assaulted, while Suarez supposedly slipped away unharmed to get help. Huh? Do I need to read that again? As the pair tried to leave the bar at around 3 a.m., a confrontation occurred with 2 waiters, David Hernandez Cruz, 26, and Perez de Jesus. Shabazz and Suarez were supposedly separated by the bar employees at gunpoint, but for unknown reasons, only Shabazz was assaulted, while Suarez supposedly slipped away unharmed to get help. Upon his return a short while later, Suarez found Shabazz badly damaged, body lying in the streets in the Plaza Garibaldi a busy tourist spot. A blunt object was used, causing fatal skull, jaw, and rib fractures. 2 other bar employees also participated in the beating, reports read. You know, sometimes you be seeing a lot of black people going places of tourism or traveling by themselves, right? But when you got a certain type of status, and then, you know, who's watching who? Huh? All right. So Shabazz was murdered a little more than 2 months after he was allegedly arrested, according to what they say here, by the FBI and harassed by law enforcement in an upstate New York town. In February 2013, Iranian state-controlled Press TV erroneously reported that the FBI had arrested Shabazz while he was en route to Iran. The story was widely reported, but 2 days later, Shabazz's family announced that the reports were false. And although he had been arrested, it had nothing to do with the FBI or Iran. Moving on. During a February 24th interview on Democracy Now!, Shabazz's aunt, Ilyasha Shabazz, said that he had gone to Mexico, invited under the premise that the African Mexicans were being discriminated and treated unfairly, and that they needed him to talk to them. And so he went thinking that he was going to speak to these people, and they ended up killing him. Zayed Muhammad, press officer for Malcolm X Commemoration Committee, stated, "There's some real serious questions about what happened to him and who he was with that still needed to be answered." Shabazz's friend, labor activist Miguel Suarez, told the Associated Press last year that the pair had been lured to the bar by a young woman who spoke to them in English. He said they were later presented with the exorbitant bill that included not only drinks but also music and female companionship. The 2 waiters were arrested soon after Shabazz's death. Killers of Malcolm X's grandson hit with 27 years. Okay, those are 2, I guess, that end up eventually being arrested for that, right? Those are the ones who got arrested for it, right? So, what are you saying, Mr. Blow Your Mind? All I'm saying is, when we look at, right? When we look at, let's go ahead here. So when we look at this, all right, let's, go ahead and do that for us, right? Okay, and that too. Do that too as well, sir. Yeah, all right. Okay, so when we look at this here,
we begin with breaking news here tonight. Malcolm X's daughter, Malika Shabazz, has been found dead in her Brooklyn apartment. Police say Shabazz's daughter found her unconscious in her Midwood living room just before 5 o'clock this evening. Police say that her death is not suspicious at this time. This does just come days after the 2 men convicted of killing Malcolm X were exonerated. Shabazz was one of 6 of Malcolm X's children. She was 56 years old.
right? So, yes, one can die of natural causes of illness. But when you look at the history of this family, right, we're not saying that there's foul play. We're not saying anybody in particular. What we're just saying is there's always been a lot of strange things that happened to this family under circumstances. Again, when you talk about ironicness, there's a possibility, there's a through line. But it's kind of like going back when you look at the beginning of the show and talks about the Groveland Four, and you hear the individual say the things she say, and never once says that, that I'm sorry or admit that I did it. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. Don't mean nobody had their part in it. But it's like everything that keeps trying to go back to that part seems to fall, it's falling apart. Like it's just a figure of everybody's imagination. So I just wanted to bring that just to give a history for those who knew nothing about the backgrounds of what supposedly had been reported out here in the news of the incidents that kept befalling this family of the Shabazzes. From their father being a prominent figure in the world who stood up and tried to do some things for a human rights perspective, and how his life was taken. Eventually his wife through an ordeal that might be questionable. We know what was put as to documents saying what happened and what was agreed upon. We get the story, the background that could be that. We have another daughter that's end up supposedly trying to revenge for her father's death, and she finds out, it gets sets up, right? So there's some circumstances around a lot of this, and it was just for news purpose, right? Not to implicate or say anything or anybody, but we know that there's a possibility of everything. Again, they said there was no suspicion to her death, but everything is suspicious when you look at everything dealing with the Shabazzes. So with that being said, this is WeUpReport. We just want to bring this out for some fat to chew on. And before we get up out of here, let's hit it one more again. And let's do it one more again, all right? All right, we are back. And that's going to be another episode of WeUpReport. I want to thank each and every one of you kindly for who sat to the end to watch this video. Again, subscribe, share, comment. The only way you can help this channel to get out of the hole it's been in for all this time is by your participation in any way you feel fit. If you think there is some value in it, we will appreciate any contributions of like, dislike, comment, share, donations, whatever you like. And again, this is the most hated show in the black corner of YouTube. Until my next show, y'all. Until the next show.